Financial audit means that a company utilized money, how much money was utilized by the company. Similarly, the IP audit is the audit of intellectual property. Intellectual property, we all know that it is uh, what is intellectual property? Do you know intellectual property? I think that all the lawyers they should know what is intellectual property. There are some students from the first year. That's why I am asking that what is intellectual property. Does someone want to try?
Okay, if we say about the intellect property and IP audit, yes, Amar.
No, just intellectual property. Что такое интеллектуальная собственность?
It's mean interacting.
Yes. Sometimes it become very difficult
You have
to explain
three
something.
elements.
So in one line, you can say that the intellectual property includes your intangible creations of human intellect. Intangible creations of human intellect. Tangibles which you can feel with hand. Intangible which you cannot feel with hand. So intangible creation of human intellect means you have created something by using your brain and you cannot touch it. Like you have written a movie, you can tell a story to anyone about the movie, but the idea you cannot touch. Yes. So intellectual property is intangible creation which is done by your brain. So intellectual property is the intangible things inside the company. So what are the intangible things inside the company? A company has trade secrets. A company has the recipe of its product. A company has a list of who the buyers are. A company has a list of the qualification of the people who are working there. So all of these things you cannot touch them with hand. Yes. So all of these things they are included in the list of intellectual property of the company. So many companies they do the IP audit. IP audit means if the intangible creation of your company is worth high, your company will cost more money. I give you an example. KFC makes a special spices. These special spices are used in their products. Now they don't tell this recipe to anyone. Other people they have some copies like AFC, UFC, or you can make any FC, but the original taste of KFC is just because of that spices. Yes. So the preparation, the recipe of that spices is the intellectual property of KFC and it cost millions of dollars. Yes. So IP audit is when you check that how much our company owes in terms of intangible creations. Okay. So now I think that it should be clear more or less that what is intellectual property. So what is your intellectual property? Your intellectual property are your creations of your mind. For example, you make a map, you write a song, you do poetry, you write a book, you write a journalistic article, you make the design, you think about a product to make it. So all of these things they are your intellectual property. Let's move on. You will take the courses in the advanced classes. So I gave you this example that how long you can owe the intellectual property. So on left side you can see a picture in a mall. This mall they ordered a sculpture maker to make sculptures of these birds. You can see the birds hanging on the roof. So the mall ordered a person, an artist, that he should make these birds. So he made the birds and he took the money. Then what happened? When the Christmas came, on the left side you can say, when the Christmas came, the mall painted these birds into the color of Christmas, the red color. So when the person who made these sculptures, he went to the mall, he saw that their sculptures has been painted into red color because of Christmas. He went to the court, and what he said to the court, he said to the court that when I painted these birds, I had vdkhnovlenia. I had an inspiration to make these birds white, but these mall, they have made my birds red. So they have infringed my intellectual property. But the mall said that now these birds belong to us. We have made money for it. We have paid money for it. Now they belong to us. It is our concern if we paid them in white or red or black or whatever color we say. But the sculpture maker insisted that no, it is the violation of my intellectual property. What is your opinion? Did the mall violate the intellectual property of this person who made these birds in white color? Did you understand the scenario? What happened? Anyone? Hello? No one? Okay.
Yes, we understand.
Yes, yes, please. Do you have any
Uh,
opinion? Do you think that it is the violation of intellectual property of that person who made these birds? Because he made the birds in white color, but the mall, what did the mall do? Mall painted them in red color. He made in white, but the mall painted in red. No? Okay. So this is an interesting phenomena. This person, you can search about him on internet. This person is named as IVV. He does many interesting things. So he had a vase of Han dynasty, means very old vase, which was passed to him through different generations. Okay, so what he did, he broke this vase and took the picture of this vase, and then he posted it on the internet. Okay, so when he posted these pictures on the internet, there was a huge controversy. Many people said that why he broke this 2000 years old vase, he shouldn't break this. But this person, IVV, he said that it is my property. Whatever I want to do, I will do. Yes. So you shouldn't be worried that if I keep or I break. What is your opinion? Do we need to allow people to do whatever they want to do with these sort of products, like very old products? Do you think he broke the vase? It was his right, or his argument that this vase belonged to me, you shouldn't worry about this? Is it a valid argument? We have 11 people. So any one of you want to give its opinion?
I think even though it's his property, this was, we shouldn't let him to broke this
Why?
because this is the object, history object. Yes.
But he says that from previous 2000 years, my family was protecting it. So it belongs to us. Now, if I break, it is not your problem. But the idea behind this is that there are many things around us which belongs to the individuals, but they have some sort of journal kind of intellectual property possession, means something which belong to one person, all the people, they think that they are attached to this. Yes, you want to say something? For example, in Uzbekistan, there might be some family who have very ancient sort of handicrafts, artifacts, and so on. If you will go into Samarkand and Bukhara, there are very old families who are living there from different generations. They might have some things in their possession which belongs to them, but many other people, like all those big people, they think that they have claim on it or they have some sort of affiliation with them. So what law say about this? Law is silent about this. Law looks into the context, but this is a valid question and you should think about this. Let's move on. Okay. So I have given some links where you can read about moral rights. So what are the moral rights? Moral rights, which I told you, that if a thing belongs to an individual person, it is his moral right that not to damage it, because if he will damage it, it will also damage the feelings of other people. Okay, so a person has personal rights, intellectual property rights, possession rights, but also he has moral rights. Yes, so here is an example of Hitler book and photo. You know, there is one portrait of Hitler, and Hitler made a lot of money out of this. We all know who the Hitler is. Yes, the German the German one. So there is one photo of the Hitler, and Hitler made a lot of money out of it. And even after his death, many people made money out of it because it was intellectual property of Hitler and his family. So yesterday we saw that what is digital content. Today we will see what is not digital content. So if you go on online store, например, in Uzbekistan, there are many online stores. If you will go on an online store, there are different products which are being sold. So these products, they are not digital content, they are physical products. They are physical products and they are being sold by internet. So if a product is being sold by internet, it doesn't mean that it is a digital product. I give you an example. Kurzinka has a website, and Kurzinka sells Myasa through their website. So we cannot say that this Myasa is digital content because it is being sold on internet. No, Myasa is a physical product. It is just being sold on internet. If a thing is being sold on internet, it doesn't mean that it becomes a digital content. Okay. Okay. So if someone gives you the free digital content, if someone gives you something free, for example, you buy a laptop, and when you buy the laptop, the window comes with this laptop for free. Or if you buy, someone has a question. What is the question? Yes, Kurzinka Tochka Uz. Yes. So if someone gives you something for free, for example, if you buy a mobile phone and this mobile phone comes with Android software, so even if you did not pay money for this software, still the supplier have liabilities. For example, you buy a mobile phone and it comes with the free software, and the software is corrupted or software is not working. The seller is liable to give you the new mobile phone or replace the software. Seller cannot say that you have paid money for the mobile and you didn't pay for the software. Seller should replace the software even he has given this for free. Okay. So similarly, when there is a software update or modifications in the software, it also belongs to the category when there are liabilities on the seller. You have taken a Windows, you have paid for the Windows, and if there is an update, the company should do this update for free. Company shouldn't take money from you because the update is being done by them, not by you. So if they are doing this, they should do it for free. Okay. Now a little bit about fintech. Fintech is becoming very famous. Everyone is talking about fintech. Fintech is a buzzword. So what is a fintech? Fintech are the technologies which we use in our financial system. One of the very famous technologies is cryptocurrency. I told you many times that Uzbekistan is thinking about making rules and regulations related to, uh, the cryptocurrencies. In Uzbekistan. You have made a mining pool. So government has made a mining pool, which means that you can do the trade of cryptocurrencies in that mining pool. So in Uzbekistan, there is a law that you cannot buy cryptocurrency, but you can sell cryptocurrency if you have cryptocurrency. So it is very interesting phenomena that you cannot buy, but you can sell. If you want to sell, you can sell, but you cannot buy cryptocurrency in Uzbekistan. So what people are doing, people make their companies outside of Uzbekistan, and then they do trade inside the Uzbekistan, and they bypass the legal jurisdictions. So I think that we need to make laws related to the regulation of cryptocurrency. Yes.
Yes.
So this data is from 2015. In 2015, approximately 50 billion was invested globally on fintech. So, like 6 years ago, $50 billion were invested in fintech. So, what is fintech? I told you the technologies which we use in our banks, in our financial system as a whole. So, in last 6 years, the term fintech has raised 1300%. Means so many people has searched about fintech, that what is it. And here is a graph which shows you the global financial activities related to fintech in billions of dollars. In 2015 it became 20 billion dollar, which is as compared to 1.9 billion dollars in 2010. Like just in 5 years it became approximately like 200%. So fintech is a blanket term for disruptive technologies affecting the financial service industries. You go into the bank, and in the bank, for standing in the queue, there is a machine, and you click the button and you get a token. This token, which shows Kakoi was Ochrid, is actually something you can say that a fintech technology. Then the person who is sitting on the computer, he is using so many softwares inside the computer related to your financial matters. This is a fintech technology. Yes. And ATM machine, you get money through the ATM machine, you can also say that it is fintech. Okay. So what is the problem with the fintech? Why we cannot reap the benefits of fintech? If fintech is so much useful, why we cannot install fintech everywhere? The problem is that when you install technologies, you have to stop the system for some time to install the technologies. For example, in metro, you are making a new metro line. Yes, you are making new metro line. And when you want to make new metro line, you will stop the metro system so that you can construct the new line. So when you will stop the metro system to construct the new line, it will disturb so many people. Many people will not be able to go on job. Many people will not be able to go to schools and colleges and university. So in case of metro, you can stop it, but in case of financial sector, you cannot stop it. So for installing financial technologies, you need to stop your financial system for 1 day or 2 day so that you can bring new technologies. And our politicians, policymakers, they cannot afford to stop this financial system. If financial system stops for 1 day, it is a huge loss for government. Okay. So that's why it is not possible for us to immediately replace everything with financial technology. Did you understand this? So what are the characteristics of financial technologies or fintech? They are mobile means you can take it wherever you want. For example, you have pay me application in your mobile phone. This pay me application is your banking system. You can carry it somewhere, somewhere wherever you want. In Finbank or any other bank, they have their own mobile applications. You can carry them. They are personalized, means you can do whatever you want to do. You can operate your account, you can transfer the money, you can exchange, you can buy, you can sell. They are customizable, so you can approach them wherever you want. From internet you can access them, and they are in your hand 24 hours. So these are some of the characteristics which make our fintech system more beneficial for our ordinary clients, rather than you know um, to go into the banks and then spend their time. Mobile means that you can move with your bank system wherever you want. If you are going to Tashkent, your bank is in your pocket. If you go to Bukhara, your bank is in your pocket. So mobile means you can move it wherever you want. So these are some of the ecosystems, means they are some of the big companies which are making, which are installing, selling and buying fintech technologies. So payment and transfers, lending and financing, retail banking, financial management, insurance, markets and exchange. These are some of the big companies, and they are making billions of dollars out of this. Yes. So now a very interesting topic. This is the future of business in post-COVID world. So very interesting and very important topics. I strongly suggest you to be very attentive on it. E-commerce, electronic commerce. All of us heard about electronic commerce. What is electronic commerce? When you do buying and selling on internet. Okay, so there are different models of e-commerce. For example, business to consumer, consumer to consumer, government to consumer, business to business, consumer to business, government to business. Yes, these are different models that how people sell their products on internet. And what sort of products are there? There are physical goods. I gave you the example of Myasa. It is a physical good. Your shoes, beauty products, sports product, everything what you see on internet, on a typical online magazine, usually they are physical goods. What you do, you order them through internet and they come to you by a delivery boy. For example, you order pizza, it is a e-commerce. You order pizza on mobile phone or internet, and this pizza is a physical good which comes to you by this delivery boy. Then there are services. For example, I am teaching online. I am providing you, this, a kind of service through internet. Okay. So this is also e-commerce. And then there are digital goods, for example, e-books, music, video, photography, webinar, software, games, online courses. All of these things, they are digital goods. So there are three types of goods which we do buying and selling on internet: physical goods, services, and digital goods. And let's see into the types of e-commerce by business modeling. So there are very interesting types. I know that some of you might have some idea about these things. Uh, so what is a typical shipping? Shipping is a form of retail business uh, in which you order something, but the person who accepts the order, he has no product in the stock. Okay, so the drop shipping is something you can understand that we priнимает заказ, но у вас нет вот этот вещь, да? So you accept the order, but you don't have this product. So you take the order first, and then you find the product. Where is it? So a person, he takes a zakat and then he start looking for the product. So this is called as drop shipping. Warehousing, you know about warehousing. Warehousing is some people, they have big places where they keep the products. And for example, Kurzinka might have a warehouse in Bukhara. So if someone orders something in Bukhara, they don't send this product from Tashkent, they send this product from their warehouse in Bukhara to that person. Okay, so this is called as warehousing. Then there is private labeling and manufacturing. um, you order a product, for example, you order a carpet, or you order some other shawl or scarf, or in Bukhara you order some handicrafts, yes, and then you ask them to put your label. For example, um, my name is Amar, so I can make my own brand. Okay, so I can order something from Bukhara or Samarkand, and then I can request them to put my name on that product. So there will be Amar carpets or Amar shawls or Amar tufli or blah blah blah. Yes, so this is my private kind of labeling. You can also do this. Yes, and then what is white labeling. White labeling is also something like private labeling. White labeling is that a product is made by one company and the other company put its own label on it. For example, Nike, Adidas, Stark, uh, so Tommy Hilfiger, all of these things, they are made in Uzbekistan because Uzbek cotton is very good quality cotton. So they make it here in Uzbekistan and then they send it to Germany or USA or UK, and there they put their own brand on it. So this is called as white labeling. And sometimes it happened that they make Nike shoes and Nike labels, and then they send both Nike shoes and Nike labels in one carton to another country, and in that country they simply put these label on the shoes, and then they say that lo, this is the Nike product. Yes, so this is the white labeling. These are the different types of e-commerce business models. Did you understand some of these things? Did you get some idea?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So these are the definition which I explained. This is the whole sketch of e-commerce. E-commerce, the types of participants, types of goods, and types of business models. So you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types of by participators. There are 7 types. Then there are goods 3 types, and then there are business model 4 types. So you can simply multiply them and you can see how many business models we have in e-commerce. For example, business to consumer, the first business to consumer model, they sell physical goods by drop shipping. It is one model. Then business to consumer, they sell digital goods by warehousing. It is second model. Business to consumer, they sell services by drop shipping, warehousing, or private labeling or white labeling. Yes, services are not possible to white label or private label, but still it is possible to do by warehousing if you have a branch in some other country, or the drop shipping is possible. But you understood the idea, yes, that how many different types of e-commerce we have. You can simply multiply them with each other, and how many types we have, that many legal challenges we have. So in future, if you are thinking to join the corporate legal system or business law, or you want to be a corporate lawyer or tax lawyer, I strongly suggest you to consider the e-commerce because it is the future. The post-COVID world will strongly depend on the e-commerce. Yes, and there are hundreds of opportunities available for you to make money. Okay, so e-commerce regulations in Central Asia. I have given some latest laws in Central Asia. I will share it with you. I'm not going to read more about it. You can read about it by yourself when I will share. Okay. For Uzbekistan, we can talk. Uzbekistan, uh, the e-commerce is just emerging. It was only 1% last year in 2020, and it is expected that by the year 2030 it will raise to 30%, and by the year 2040 it will be 50% of your whole trade. So all of you who are in first year, you can see that after 10 years, when you will be a very good lawyer, a professional, the trade of e-commerce will be 30%. So if you want to get benefit at that time, if you want to make money out of out of your profession at that time, you should start working right now. You should start thinking about e-commerce, because after 10 years, the trade which is 1% will be 30% of your whole economy, and you will have a lot of jobs. So these are different laws and regulations, and precaz presidenta, and resolution of cabinet of minister related to electronic commerce, means so many of them, and they are working on it. Yes, these are also some of the laws in Uzbekistan. Okay. Okay. Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan. And 5G technology. About 5G technology, 5G, I told you, it a high speed internet. We made a report about 5G technology in Central Asia. I will share this report in the group also. There you can see different laws related to 5G technology in Central Asian countries. So this is all about it. I will not go through this. Smart contract we have already covered, and I will now move to the second topic because of the lack of time. Yes. Okay. Okay. Can you see this? Hello.
Yes, yes.
Social cost of the goods. Uh, is there someone who attended my course last time besides Muhammad Ali? So did any one of you attended my course last time? No?
No,
Okay. So social cost of good, very interesting topic, and be very attentive because it is very important topic. So what is social cost? Uh, when you buy something, when you buy something, there are the cost which you pay. For example, you pay for the product, but beside paying for the product itself, there are some other costs you have to pay. I give you this example: petrol or benzene. You bought the petrol of let's say $5, and you paid only $5, but there are external costs. For example, when you will burn this benzene, there are congestion charges. I mean, your motor vehicle will spend some energy, and this energy will cost money. Physical work of the machine, congestion, you can say. And then there will be pollution out of this benzene, and there are pollution, charges, you can say. So the personal cost is the amount of money which you paid, and then there are external costs. So when you calculate social cost, you sum up the personal cost and external cost. So the social cost of benzene is $9, but you paid only $5. Yes. Did you understand the idea of social cost? For example, another example, when you smoke a cigarette, this smoke is $6, 20 cigarettes $6. You have paid only $6. But also, when you will smoke this cigarette, it will cost damage to your lungs, to your health. It will cost money. These smoke of these cigarettes will cost damage to the other people, and they will spend extra money on their health. Yes. And then you will throw these cigarette butts and the cigarette packets on the street, which will pollute your environment. This will cost money. Okay. So the social cost of smoking is not only $6 which you paid for the cigarette. The social cost of smoking is the sum of the total of everything which is associated with this. Did you understand what is social cost? No? If no, then
Oh,
tell
yes,
me,
yes.
I'll explain. Hello? Yes or no?
I think it will be good if you understand with another example.
For example, you buy something from internet and you pay $10. But the same product is $6 in the shop. You don't want to go to the shop, you go to the internet magazine because it is easy for you. You are willing to pay extra money. Yes.
Mhm.
So this extra money, you can say that it is the external cost of the product, and the social cost is the external cost plus the original cost. It is the social cost. So another example is here. When you make an airport, you make an airport, it costs you $1 billion. But when you make the airport, you also destroy your nature, you destroy the habitats of animals, you destroy the natural beauty of that place. Yes. Or any building, when you make any building, you destroy the natural view of that area, which cost money. So the social cost of building an airport is not $1 billion. It is also the amount of money which is equal to the money which you have spent when you will reconstruct the natural environment. So one more simple example is that if you buy a computer, it is $100. But when you buy the computer, you also damage your eyes. You also throw the packet of this computer into the garbage. It also costs money. So there are health costs and there are pollution costs. So the total social cost of the computer is not $1,000. It is also 1,000 plus cost to your eyes plus cost to your environment. So it can be $1,200. So this is the social cost. Okay.
Yes, I understand.
So why it is important? It is important that whenever you manufacture everything, whenever you make something, you calculate the original cost, you don't calculate the social cost. For example, you make something out of plastic and you say that it is 1,000 som product, but you don't calculate that how much damage this product will do to the environment. Maybe it will do the damage which is equal to 2,000 soms. So the total social cost will be 3,000 soms, 2,000 soms damage and 1,000 som original cost. Okay. So it is important for us to calculate the social cost of all the products. For example, what is the social cost of a gun, a rifle? The social cost of the rifle is not the money which you have paid for the rifle or the gun. The social cost is much more higher because when you will use this rifle, it will do damages. And if you monetize those damages, it will cost money. So the social cost of rifle is not only the amount of money which you spent for buying the rifle, but also the external cost which will be emerging from this rifle. So if the social cost, please be attentive. If the social cost is low, if the social cost is low, we say that it is a good product. If the social cost is high, we say that it is a bad product in terms of economics. For example, you spend $1,000 on buying one car, but then you spend $2,000 on maintaining this car. So the social cost is $3,000 now. So is it good or bad? It is bad because you paid $1,000 and then you spent $2,000 on remote. So it is bad. So the social cost, if the social cost is very high, we say that it is bad product. If the social cost is low, we say that it is a good product. Did you understand? And then you calculate the
Yes.
social efficacy. It is a statistical terminology. I will not talk about it to make you more bore. This is an interesting topic, very interesting topic, and I want you to focus on this because many people don't focus on these types of issues, especially the lawyers should consider the cultural dimension of the issues. So how the culture impact on the cost? First of all, what is the culture? How you can define the culture? Can any one of you define culture? How many students are here? 12 students. Can any one of you tell me что такое культура? Что такое культура? What is culture?
Culture is a way of life.
Culture is a way of life. Yes, it is very general definition. Yes,
Yes.
culture is also way
It
of life.
belongs to a group. Yeah. To exactly a group of people.
Yes. Malchiki, what do you think? What is the culture? No, you don't think anything. Okay, so there is not a single definition of culture, but we hear many things related to the culture. For example, intercultural competence. Intercultural competence. What is the intercultural competence? You have seen you have seen many people around you who will say that I was born in Samarkand or Bukhara or Fargana or Karakal, Pakistan. But now I came to Tashkent, and after living 5 years, I have adopted the Tashkent's culture. So they have overcome their intercultural competence, means they have become the part of the culture in which they are living right now. I lived in Central Asia for 10 years. So I understand many things related to Central Asian people. I know that how to behave among the Central Asian people. So it's mean that I have intercultural competence, some sort of. So intercultural harmony, what does it mean by intercultural harmony? When different cultures, they collaborate, they mix, they come close to each other, they should understand the demands of each other's culture. This is called as intercultural harmony. And culture by itself is not static. Culture is dynamic. Culture keep changing. For example, the culture of Uzbekistan 300 years ago, it is not the same as it is today. 300 years ago, people were wearing different clothes. People were living in different sort of houses. So today the culture has been changed. So intercultural competence and intercultural harmony, and after the culture is dynamic, means culture keep changing. What is the culture today, it will change after 10 or 20 years. So we will say that the new people are adopting new intercultural competence. or at that time when the culture will collaborate, we will say that they should have intercultural harmony. And uh, there is a famous saying that you can adopt the culture, but you cannot be the part of that culture. Or there are some other factors, for example linguistic factors, ethnic factors. And it has been said that once a foreigner always a foreigner. Now I speak, my speaking is not as good as my reading and writing of Russian language. But I know that I speak better Russian language than many Uzbek people. I speak Russian language better than many Uzbek people. And I can eat all the Central Asian foods. I can eat pulao and begum and lagman and everything. I love that. Uh, I can wear the Uzbek clothes, okay. Uh, but still, after living so many years in Central Asia, I am a foreigner, and people will never accept me as an Uzbek, Kyrgyz, Kazakh, Tajik, or Turkmen just because I am. I have adopted their culture. Just because I have adopted their culture, they will never say that he has become one of us. So once a foreigner is always a foreigner, and this will strongly impact on my business relations. Yes, if I speak very good Russian, I can communicate, but still the business party, the other party will say that, oh, this person, he is иностранец, но очень хорошо разговаривает на русском языке. Yes, so they will never forget that I am a foreigner or not. So they will always consider me a foreigner, even though I have adopted their culture, and this will always impact on my business. Similarly, I shouldn't say this, but let's still, since we are very less people, I can talk about this. Devushki, the Devushki, even if they are very intelligent, very intelligent, I know some girls, they are very intelligent. You can say that monster style of intelligent. So even they are very intelligent, in a corporate environment, still they are considered as female. When the male will talk to each other, they will say, "Wo teta devushka, this is a girl, so don't trust on her, or don't give her difficult job." Or there are some stereotypes that if the girl is doing something, she will ruin this, like traffic. Yes, like cars, there are very good drivers. For example, my Malacha Sistrionka, she is a very good driver. She is a very good driver, and she has her car, and she drives much better than me. Yes. But on the roads of Tashkent, you have seen many people saying that, "Wo Devushka is driving and she's driving very bad." So this is a stereotype which has become the part of our subconscious, that we have biases towards female. Similarly, on the workplaces, when there is a girl, we consider that if there is a girl, it's mean that she will not do her job properly, even though she is a very intelligent lady. Yes. Are you agree with me? No? Girls, you should agree, at least I am saying in your favor.
Yes, yes, we agree.
Okay. So just keep saying something so I may know you are here. Okay. So these are some of the stereotypes. I'm talking about stereotypes, that how they impact on business, on our business relations. The premier, yeah, I will prefer to do business with the boy rather than to do business with the girl. I should accept this. Yes. And many other people have similar sort of superstitions in their mind related to the female, and similarly they have different superstitions related to different cultures. For example, Tatars, many people think that in Central Asia, Tatars, they are very clever, Aniochin, Shustri, and Hitri. Yes. And Jews, for example, we have superstitions about them that Yuvri and Yochin Shustrieda. And similarly, we have different perceptions about people from Samarkand and Bukhara, and maybe they have some superstitions about people from Tashkent and Fargana and so on. So these types of things which are related to our culture, ethnicity, language, linguistic groups, they strongly impact on our business. For example, if a Tashkent person do a business with Bukhara person, it is different. But if a Bukhara person does a business with the Bukhara person, he will say, "What ani je nashi swaida." So they will have more trust on the people from the same city. But let's move on. I think you understood. Yes, I'm sure you understood. So the question is, are there good cultures or bad culture? Is culture good or bad? We think that means we say that the good cultures or bad culture. For example, in Fargana Valley, maybe the lifestyle of the females is very strict as compared to the lifestyle of female in Tashkent. The Tashkent girls, they are much more liberal, democratic, and progressive. They can go out, they can hang out with their friends, they can do parties, they can go to the discos. So they might have more freedom from their families. But in Fargana, or a very traditional family in Samarkand and Bukhara, very religious family, may not give the same freedom and luxuries to their ladies. So many people will say that the Tashkent culture is good culture, or similarly, many people in Bukhara will say that Tashkent culture is a bad culture. Yes, vice versa. But the question is that is there good culture or bad culture? Do you think that there is good culture or bad culture? Good. What is your opinion? Hello?
May I speak?
I don't think.
Yes. Do you think is there something which is called as good culture or bad culture?
I don't think cultures will be good or bad.
But why?
Because they are all different in their own way.
Yes. So there is a book which is called as The Elements of Moral Philosophy. The Elements of Moral Philosophy is written by James Richels. I will send this book to you into the group. So James Richels gave a very interesting story in his book related to different cultures, and it says very interesting thing. It says that what is good for you may not be good for others. The girls, they in Tashkent, they want to go out. It is good for them, but it is not good for the people from other regions, for example. Yes. So what is good for you may not be good for them. Hijab or bikini. For example, in Afghanistan, and some part of Pakistan, a certain part of Middle East, girls wear hijab. In Turkey, hijab is becoming very famous. Yes. So uh, for some people, it is good. Hijab is good. For some people, it is not. For example, France, you have heard that he has banned the burqa or hijab. Yes. So it depends on different cultures that they set different moral codes related to some things. So then there is an interesting example in this book. It says that the Muslim people, they bury their dead people. When someone dies, what we do, we take them into the graveyard and bury them into the ground. Yes. Hindu Hindus, they burn the dead bodies. When someone dies, they burn the dead bodies. And the Gorkha are the people that live in Nepal and Tibet and certain part of China. So what Gorkhas does, Gorkha, when someone dies, they eat him. They eat this dead person. And similarly, there are Parsi. Parsi are found in India, in Pakistan, in Iran. So what they does, when someone dies, they put them into a very big building or a tall building or on a mountain where the birds and animals can eat the dead body. So the Parsi does it like this. Muslim bury, Hindus they burn, Gorkha they eat, and Parsi they throw it on a mountain so that the animals can eat. Now everyone thinks that he is doing right. Muslim bury it because they think that body is sacred. Body is sacred means body has nobility, body is noble, body is pure. So we should respect the body, and for respecting the body, we should bury it in the ground. This is the Muslim way. What is the Hindu way? Hindu think that if you burn it and then you throw the ashes into the water, it is like you give your body to the god. The water, the river is Ganga, and you throw your ashes into the water, it means that your body has went back to the god. Gorkhas, they eat, and their logic is that instead of throwing or burning or burying, it is good that if we eat the dead body of our father or mother or grandparents, so that it become the part of our body. Kagda mikusha myasa, this myasa will come our myasa, yes. So they have this logic. And the Parsi think that we should throw our body so that other animals and other birds can eat, because nature should also get benefit from our bodies. Like we have the right on our bodies, similarly the other natural animals or birds, they have right on our body, so we should donate our body to them. Now ladies and gentlemen, all of these four people, they have their own logics, and all of these four logics are true for them, and all of these four logics are logically acceptable. Are you agree with me?
Yes, I agree.
Yes, there are very interesting discussion topics, but you don't want to discuss. Okay. So, yeah. So we cannot say just because we are Muslims, we bury our dead persons. Hindus are bad, or Gorkhas are bad, or Parsis are bad. Similarly, Hindus cannot say that they burn their dead bodies, so Muslims are bad, or Gorkhas are bad, or Parsis are bad. Yes, they are good in their own moral context. They are good in their own culture. So their moral code is different from other moral code. And no one can say that my moral code is superior to other moral code. So there is another example of
But
Islam. Yes.
but what does Gorkha's infestator cause disease?
What?
It will cause disease, I mean.
It will cost disease?
Yeah.
No, it is arguable. It is arguable. What will cause disease? When you cook the myasa, the bacteria destroys. Or
Very often to that.
I mean, these things are arguable.
In African countries, some tribes, they eat the dead people.
These Gorkhas, I am saying the Gorkhas, they eat the dead people.
Yes, but that's not kind of slick.
It is not good for us, but it is normal for them. So we cannot say that just because it is not good for us, it is bad for them as well. Naprimir, you like pink color lipstick. you like a red color
Mhm.
lipstick, it doesn't mean that the other persons should not wear the black color or red color or pink color lipstick. It is just your matter of choice. If you like something in food, it doesn't matter that the other people should also like this in food. So I give you another example. In Eskimos, you know, they live on the North Pole and they make a small yurta and they live inside it. Eskimo people, yes, on the North Pole. Have you seen the picture of these Eskimo people? They live in extreme
Yes.
cold. Okay.
Yeah.
So in Eskimo people, when there is a ghosty, there is a guest in the house, they offer their girls to them for spending nights, and the guest can have sexual relations with the females of that house where he is living as a guest, and it is considered as normal, like it is some sort of hospitality towards your guests, and there is no social stigma attached with it, and Eskimo people are perfectly fine with this. Similarly, it was practiced that in those areas when a girl born, it is the choice of the parent if they want to keep the girl or if they want to kill the girl, because ladies, they cannot survive in that harsh environment. I mean, they are not very useful in that type of environment. They cannot do the labor, they cannot do the work. So if there is a male child, he is more useful for that environment. So if you have enough girls and there is a new baby girl, you can kill her, and there is no social stigma attached to it, means it is perfectly fine for them. It is their culture. Now, if similar things we think here in our context, we say, "Oh, astaghfirullah, how these people are surviving? What kind of, their rituals are, or what these people are doing? They will go to Jahannam and they should die." Yes, this is our feeling. Da da Ilanet.
Yes, yes. The,
But for, but for them, it is perfectly fine. So different cultures have different moral codes, and one culture's moral code is not different from the other culture moral code. This is something which is argued, and and this is called as cultural relativism. Cultural relativism means all the cultures, they are relative to their own culture, their own context, and one culture is not superior to other culture. And here you can see that two girls, one is wearing this what you call it, bikini, and I don't know what is the politically correct terminology. Anyways, she is wearing something, she's wearing nothing, and the other girl is wearing a burqa. So both of them, they have different perceptions about themselves. Yes, the semi naked lady, she is thinking that it is violence against women to have burqa, and the burqa lady is thinking that it is very bad and ethically, morally, it is wrong that a girl is not wearing anything. So different cultures, different perceptions. So what is the theory of cultural relativism? Very important theory. It is the opposite of universalism. Universalism is something which you can say, like universal moral code, like UN Declaration of Human Rights. It is the theory of universalism. It is opposite to cultural relativism. What is cultural relativism? Cultural relativism says that different cultures or different societies have different moral codes. I gave you an example. Yes, the Muslims and Gorkhas and Parsis and Hindus, they have different moral codes. There is no objective standard that can be used to judge one social code is better than other. We cannot say that the French people, they don't wear hijab, that's why they are bad, or the Afghan girls, they wear burqa, that's why they are good. So there is no moral instrument on which we can judge. The moral code of our society has no special status. It is merely one among many. Means if you are Uzbek, it doesn't mean that you are Kruti. You are just people like many other people inside the world. So there is no superiority to one culture on another, and there is no universal truth in ethics. Means something which is good for one person, it is not the case that the same thing should be good for the other person. Okay, so there are no moral truth. Means there is no right and wrong. You cannot generalize. The moral code of the society determine what is right within the society. So it is the society which decide what is good inside their society. For example, if the Eskimos want to offer their girls for sex to the other people, and they think that it is fine, so it is fine for them, because they are the people who will decide among themselves. Okay, so it is mere arrogance for us to try to judge the conduct of other people. We shouldn't judge the other people. We shouldn't say that just because we wear burqa or we wear hijab, that's why we are superior. So we should adopt an attitude of tolerance towards the practices of other cultures. So in 21st century, we should adopt the culture of tolerance. Means we should tolerate what other people are doing and what we expect them to tolerate if the things become worse in our scenario. So this is the theory of cultural relativism. I am not saying that you should be agree or you should disagree. I am just giving you a theory, and I am telling you that how this theory impacts on our personal relationship, intercultural harmony, intercultural competence, and Tom Chisley, it impacts on our business relationship. So there are many people who are culturally relative, and there are many people who are the follower of universalism. So I also don't accept the theory of cultural relativism. But my parents, for example, they are very culturally relatives. My teachers, some of them, they are very culturally relative. So it is up to you. I just gave put it in front of you from academic point of view. So intercultural competences, culturalization. So what is the culturalization? Means when you go into another culture, you pass through the process of culturalization. Oh, this is 11:11. Let's have a break, okay? Let's have a break for 5 minutes. I will drink some water and then I will come back. Okay,
Okay, fine.
5 minutes break.